Is the warrior code flawed? I would imagine if you asked any one of Erin Hunter's characters, they're liable to say no. Even cats who have broken clan laws like Leafpool and Yellowfang will tell you that they made bad decisions in violating them. On the other hand, if you ask readers of the series the same question, I posited that you would get a much different consensus, and I was right. In a Twitter poll I conducted, 95% of those who responded indicated yes, the warrior code is flawed. While it's a pretty small sample size of the fandom, I think it's fair to say that this is its general attitude on the subject. This channel has never been about validation though, and like Erin Hunter, I enjoy conveying more thought-provoking ideas to my audience. So here I stand, I believe that the warrior code is not flawed and will attempt to explain my reasoning behind it. First off, what exactly is the warrior code? This might seem like a silly question, but it's actually kind of a gray area. In the comments of my poll, Moonkitty and several others took issue with the rule that medicine cats can't have mates or kits. What's worth noting though is that the rule in question is not actually part of the warrior code. It's a traditional clan rule that often gets lumped in with the warrior code. It's in the same vein as kits can't leave camp or that you're not allowed to eat when going to a sacred site like Moonstone or Moonpool. However, to avoid any arguments in the comments about whether this counts or not, I'll tackle the medicine cat issue in this as well. In order to understand why I think that the warrior code is not flawed, I think it's important to understand what its actual purpose is. According to Secrets of the Clans, the warrior code was established following a devastating battle between pre-clan cats. The surviving cats were commanded by their ancestors to live by the warrior code, which in turn would fill their hearts with courage and nobility. Fights would be facilitated by honor and justice rather than avarice. Let's make it clear that these rules were not put in place to create a utopian society. As stated on page 6 of Secrets of the Clans, there was not always peace between the clans, but that was to be expected. Cats are born with claws and teeth for a reason. Rather, the purpose of these rules was to create a set of values which, if adhered to, would ensure the cats of the clans would survive. If the purpose of the warrior code is to ensure the survival of the cats of the clans, then in order for the warrior code to be flawed, its rules must not be conducive to that end. Makes sense, right? So in order to test the warrior code, I'll be inserting each individual tenet into this line of reasoning to ensure that it works. Number 1. Defend your clan, even with your life. You may have friendships with cats from other clans, but your loyalty must remain to your clan, as one day you may meet them in battle. So the first sentence seems to fit in well. In order for the cats of the clans to survive, they must be willing to defend themselves and their respective factions. A clan can afford to lose a single cat, but the body cannot afford to lose an entire clan. Once one clan is gone, then you set a precedent that every other clan can perish as well. That precedent is not just devastating with regards to the literal security of the other clans, but losing a clan would be devastating to the morale of all cats in the clans. Look no further than the first book in the series when Shadow Clan drove out Wind Clan. The very structure of the forest was altered. River Clan was so fearful of the same thing happening to them that they acquiesced to tyranny in response. So defending your own clan is not just important to an individual or one single clan, but to all warriors. The second sentence also meets this end, as clans are the foundation of warrior life. It's important to understand the benefit of having populations controlled by competing nation states, which is exactly what the clans are. All of them have their own distinct cultures, history, and niches, as well as clearly defined and maintained borders. They are textbook examples of nation states. As a result, they compete with each other for resources. This leads them to specialize in skills that allow them to survive in their own territories, as well as force them to train their cats to be the best warriors possible in order to compete for territory against one another. Essentially, it's an omnipresent arms race of fighting skills and tactical innovations that serve more than just inter-clan violence, but also allows them to deal with threats from rogues, foxes, badgers, beavers, or whatever else nature throws at them. By competing with one another, they are ensuring that they are better prepared to deal with other problems as well. What this second provision does is it ensures the integrity of this nation-state model. If cats get all friendly with one another, then the advantage of inherent competition between rival factions disappears. A final quick note on why 4 nation-states are better than one super-state: bad leaders come into power power all the time in the forest. Imagine if Broken Star became the leader of Lion Clan instead of Shadow Clan. Now, instead of having 3 other clans to oppose him, you have only internal pressure to stop him, which, as I demonstrated in my video on Broken Star and the parallel between his regime and that of Nazi Germany, cannot always be counted on to oppose tyranny. Given all of that, I think it's fair to say that the first tenet does indeed work to ensure the survival of the cats of the clans. Number 2. Do not hunt or trespass on another clan's territory. This rule goes hand in hand with the previous one in that it works to maintain the integrity of the nation states. Viddy the Foxdog mentioned on Twitter that this rule is so often broken with little or no repercussions that it's essentially useless. However, it's worth noting that there's a sense of honor-bound integrity instilled in warrior cats from a very young age. They're taught that what separates them from rogues and kitty pets is their code-driven lifestyle, and as such, it must be abided by at all times. If this rule didn't exist, then it would undermine the first one. Not only would borders cease to have meaning, but it would also allow for a greater amount of interaction between cats in different clans, which would further tempt them to break the command of the first tenet about being loyal to your clan above all else. As we see in Fire and Ice, Fireheart cannot bring himself to attack Silverstream because of his friend's refusal to abide by this tenet. Of course, this rule alone is not always going to prevent disobedience, but I don't think it's controversial to say that it does deter a great deal of possible offenders. Number 3. Elders, queens, and kits must be fed before apprentices and warriors. Unless they have permission, apprentices may not eat until they have hunted to feed the elders. If any warrior or apprentice is sick or injured, they may eat while the elders, queens, and kits are eating. This rule may seem like it's merely promoting a sort of chivalrous or moral attitude about putting the weak before the strong, and that is in fact correct. However, there's nothing arbitrary about that belief. You've probably heard the phrase that a team is only as strong as its weakest member. If you buy into that, then this rule should be a no-brainer. However, let's dive a little deeper into this. If you were to neglect the welfare of elders, queens, and kits, then what does that lead to? In the case of neglecting elders, it will probably make current and future warriors wonder what kind of future they're serving in their clan. If they're only considered valuable when they're able-bodied, then what's the point in fighting to secure a future that they eventually won't benefit from? If you disrespect the elderly, then you disincentivize the younger generation to work as hard, which once again will undermine the strength of the nation state in question. With queens and kits, it's much of the same. By looking after them, you are making an investment in the future. If you don't take care of queens, then other girls won't want to have kits, and those that do will struggle to keep them alive if they're not being looked after. Final note, the clause about apprentices eating only after they have hunted helps instill this virtue in them. We're all naturally selfish beings, so it's important to teach these cats communal values when they're young. Number 4. Prey is killed only to be eaten. Give thanks to StarClan for its life. Pretty obvious one here. When you have people competing for a scarce amount of resources, none of those resources can afford to be wasted. Also, like the last one, requiring that cats give thanks helps instill respect and virtue in them. Number 5. A kit must be at least 6 moons old to become an apprentice. This one has the same line of reasoning as the third tenet. Kits are the future and must be treated with care to ensure that the greatest number of them possible are able to survive and benefit the clan later on. Cats that are exposed to the harsh outside world too young are at a greater risk of premature death. Number 6. Newly appointed warriors will keep a silent vigil for 1 night after receiving their warrior name. This one's a little tricky. At the very least, you can make the argument that a focused night of surveillance can help keep the clan safe. This was certainly the case during Broken Star's surprise attack on Wind Clan when the newly made warrior sentries are able to alert their clanmates of the attack just in time for them to create an effective rearguard action to allow the clan to retreat to live to fight another day. I'd also posit that this ritual helps convey the weight of the achievement to these young warriors. Instead of going out and partying all night, they're forced to silently reflect on the future they've committed to. It's a spiritual process which I think in some cases at least facilitates a degree of personal growth and maturation, which can hardly be seen as a negative for the cats or clans as a whole. Number 7. A cat cannot be made deputy without having mentored at least one apprentice. On Twitter, Sarabi's made a case against the 9th tenet about appointing a deputy before Moon High, claiming that it could lead to a rushed and irresponsible decision. I would present the 7th tenet as evidence to the contrary to all who agree with that position. Making sure that a cat has mentored at least one apprentice by the time they become deputy ensures two things. One, that they're not obscenely young and ill-equipped for duty. So let's say, for example, that a leader wants to make his son deputy, but his son is just a young warrior and has yet to train an apprentice. This tenet helps guard against such unmerited nepotism. Secondly, like the 6th tenet, training an apprentice is a period of spiritual growth and maturation for the mentor. By going through this process, the warrior will experience a greater deal of responsibility for their clanmates, which in turn will make them better prepared to handle the responsibilities of being deputy down the road. Number 8. The deputy will become clan leader when the leader dies, retires, or is exiled. This one is good for two reasons. One, it ensures that a qualified and experienced warrior will become leader of the clan, and two, it prevents the creation of a power vacuum and allows life to continue on as soon as possible. This is why Tallstar's decision to make One Whisker his deputy at the last minute was such a disaster. Since nobody reputable was around to hear him say this, he essentially destroyed the protection that this tenet gives. As a result, his clan didn't move on, instead falling into civil war. Number 9. After the death or retirement of the deputy, the new deputy must be chosen before Moon High. So like I said, the 7th tenet protects against the possibility of a leader making a horrible, unqualified selection. Additionally, a good leader like Sunstar or Bluestar or Firestar, really any ThunderClan leader, come to think of it, already has an idea in their head who the top warriors in their clan are. There might be some indecision as to who the best one is, but typically they already have candidates in mind before this situation even occurs. It was suggested that leaders be given more time to make this decision, but honestly, I don't think giving a hack leader like Brokenstar more time to name a thug his deputy is going to do much good. The time limit is there so that the clan can quickly move on with operations. Number 10. A gathering of all 4 clans is held at the full moon during a truce that lasts for the night. There shall be no fighting among clans at this time. This one's all about maintaining peace and honor. It basically forces rival cats to humanize each other once a month, so the stereotypes about each other break down long enough to preserve peace until the next meeting. It also provides a morally obligated forum to work out problems with one another so conflicts can be resolved with diplomacy rather than violence. Number 11. Boundaries must be checked and marked daily. Challenge all trespassing cats. If you're still awake, then you might recall me talking about nation states about 5 or 10 minutes ago. Someone raised the question, what's the point of borders if they don't work? Well, typically they do work, and this is why. I'd actually argue that patrols more often than not are the ones escorting trespassers to camp rather than cats sneaking around other clans' territories. This also protects those poor, helpless elders, queens, and kits that I previously talked about by keeping battles confined to the borders rather than the camps. Number 12. No warrior can neglect a kid in pain or danger even if the kid is from a different clan. The clans need each other more than they often realize, so it makes sense that an investment in the future of one clan is in turn an investment in all 4 clans. In addition, like the Gathering, this tenet forces the clans to treat each other a little nicer here and there, which typically leads to better relations and thus fewer battles. Number 13. The word of the clan leader is the warrior code. This is yet another tenet that is put in place to prevent internal conflicts within clans. Leaders have experience and wisdom that is rarely matched within their clan, so it follows that it's wise to follow them as a good rule of thumb. Now you might say, hold on, what if the leader wants to do something terrible and their judgment is flawed? To answer that, let's look at the case of Brokenstar. Brokenstar violated the warrior code continuously, whether it was apprenticing kits under 6 moons, neglecting elders, queens, and kits, not only neglecting kits in danger, but being the one to put his own and other clans' kits in danger. Really bad stuff. Now, there's nothing in the warrior code about not fighting other clans without a casus belli, but cats are justified in rising up against a leader who acts outside of the warrior code, as implied by the 14th tenet, which sets a precedent that the warrior code does not apply when dealing with cats outside of the warrior code. The 8th tenet also implies that it is within the warrior code to rebel against a leader when it lists exile as a possible reason for a leader to be replaced. So a rebellion against a terrible leader like Brokenstar is perfectly justified by the warrior code. Now, you might take issue with this tenet by bringing up the example of Fireheart going behind Bluestar's back to prevent an unjust battle with Wind Clan. We can all agree that the outcome of the situation was good, but are Fireheart's actions justified? I'd actually say yes. If you'll recall, Bluestar had openly rejected and declared war on StarClan, you know, the cats who established the warrior code to begin with. So much like Brokenstar, the 13th tenet cannot apply to Bluestar because she is in fact living outside of the warrior code. In that case, Fireheart no longer has a moral or legal obligation to follow her orders. Number 14. An honorable warrior does not need to kill other cats to win his or her battles unless they are outside the warrior code or if it is necessary for self-defense. The purpose of this tenet is to limit the number of casualties in battles. As I stated at the beginning, StarClan was well aware that there would be fights in the future and they were fine with that. However, this rule controls that very natural phenomenon so that fights will not cripple any of the clans. They keep the benefit of training and innovating to fight against one another without the consequences of a devastating, lethal conflict afterwards. One commenter suggested that this tenet was flawed by claiming that it sounds like an extreme religious commandment to kill non-believers. However, this tenet is not a call to jihad, but rather a self-imposed regulation on use of lethal force. Number 15. A warrior rejects the soft life of a kitty pet. Do I really need to explain this one? You have to fully commit to your clan and way of life. Otherwise, your commitment and integrity comes into question and you become a less valuable member of your own clan. Number 16. Each clan has the right to be proud and independent, but in times of trouble, they must forget their boundaries and fight side by side to protect the four. Each clan must help the others so that no clan will fall. This is basically like the NATO of warrior cats, and I like it. I honestly don't know if it was really necessary to add on, since I think other things I've discussed emphasize and promote this agreement already, but it certainly doesn't hurt. I especially like the inclusion that the clans have a right to be proud and independent, since it maintains and promotes their roles as competing nation states while also promoting a sacred alliance against outside threats. It's really a win-win, and kind of poetically caps off the list by tying together the themes woven throughout all previous tenets. Okay, so now let's touch on the medicine cats can't have kits or mates issue. Moon Kitty made a really good point that they're also liable to prioritize friends and family. This is true, but in keeping with the spirit of the warrior code, this rule removes threats to their integrity, thus ultimately promoting a greater chance of survival for the cats of the clans. It definitely has a weaker effect than others, which is why I think it's not actually included on the list. Kate Carey has said that the rules are malleable and tend to fit with the spirit of the times. As it turns out, this rule came into practice as a result of Mothflight, you know, one of the original medicine cats, and her struggle to juggle her duties with a family. As a possible amendment, I agree with what Helene Darmstadt said on Twitter that medicine cats may have mates and kits if they have a fully trained apprentice. So that's that. The warrior code is pretty awesome, and I think I proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that that is in fact true. I hope you guys enjoyed being proven wrong, and feel free to discuss any of the points I made in the comments below. Thank you so much to everyone who participated in my Twitter poll, and be sure to follow me at lizard_wizard if you want to do so in the future. Also, a huge shout out to all of the people who made all this great art that I used in this video for me. They all did it for free and like on their free time and just like out of the kindness and passion instilled in their hearts, and I think that's really awesome. So here's a list of everyone who did art. Go check out their websites. If you like any of their art that you saw in this video, then you should definitely go and like commission them and give them money to make you art and stuff, because they're all really cool and awesome people, and I can't thank them enough. If you also want to be cool like them, then you can consider becoming a patron. You can go to patreon.com/lizardwizard and consider consider giving me $1 a video once per month or $1,000 a video every video for the rest of the time. Like, really, it's all up to you, man. The ball is in your court, but it would be super awesome if you did. And all proceeds go to help a starving artist in college, so morality's on your side. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.